Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Greetings, my name is Bob Beatty, and along with Mark Peterson, I will be your host for a special campaign edition of Insight Politics, the public affairs program coming to you from the beautiful campus here at Washburn University. Our guest today is State Treasurer Tim Shallenberger, a candidate for the Republican nomination for governor of the state of Kansas, a spot which will be decided by the Republican primary on August 6th. In the coming months, the campaign will heat up, and the majority of you will only view Mr. Shallenberger and the other candidates through the prism of very short interviews on the local news and 30-second TV commercials. Our approach at Insight Politics has always been different in that, as opposed to some, we actually believe that the more you get to know your candidates and public officials, the better served we all are. To that end, today's show is essentially Tim Shallenberger Unplugged, a chance to have an extended conversation with a man who could be our next governor. Mr. Shallenberger, thanks for appearing on the show.
Great to be here.
I'd like to ask you, first of all, why do you want to be governor?
Well, we believe that it's time in Kansas that we have a conservative governor. The budget has serious problems with it this year, as you may notice watching the legislature, and I believe that it's important that we have somebody with a background in finance like I have had, being the state treasurer, and a banker that really watches the dollars and cents that we spend in this state. And so we believe a fiscal conservative would be a good governor to have.
Okay. In your announcement speech and in later interviews, you identified what you called some central issues for Kansas. Let me start with three. You mentioned the environment, tourism and economic development, and education and improving teacher salaries. Tell me why you think these are key issues for Kansas and what you might do as governor in relation to these issues.
What I've tried to do throughout my political life is look ahead, and I think it's important that we as Kansans try to figure out where we're going to be 10 years from now, 50 years from now. You know, time passes very quickly. I ran for the legislature because of an environmental issue at home. In the early and mid-'80s, we had determined that we had some very big environmental problems left by unreclaimed mine land in southeast Kansas. It caused me to run for the legislature, and those environmental problems started 50 years before. And if people would have had foresight 50 years before on the environment, we wouldn't have had the problems that we had today. That's why I believe that we always have to look ahead with regards to the environment. And so there are not a lot of issues there. There's not a lot of legislation needed probably today to keep clean air, clean water, to make sure that current reports that are out about the quality of our rivers, those are important things for not this generation but the next one. And so I think we should always be mindful there. Tourism is an area where this state has suffered drastically. We do not put enough money into tourism, and as a conservative, people say you're always wanting to cut something and eliminate something. Not in all cases. There are things we should probably spend more money, areas we should spend more money. One's the promotion of ourselves through tourism. It's one of the biggest industries in the state. It's over a $3 billion industry, yet we spend, I think it's like $700,000 in the advertising part of our tourism budget. I think it's a good, clean economic development in an area we should invest in. You hit big one, schools, teachers' pay. The school funding's over half of the general fund budget of the state. So for every tax dollar you as a Kansan send to Topeka, half of it's going to education. We've increased funding for education statewide by 125% over the last decade, yet teachers' pay hasn't gone up. And the crisis that we read about today in schools is not a crisis that our buildings are crumbling or that our class sizes are bad. It's a crisis that we can't keep teachers working So we should give incentives to have teachers stay in, first of all, people to want to be teachers, and then those to stay here. Incentives like helping pay for student loans for those who want to be teachers, maybe allowing some retired teachers to come back without losing their pension benefits, things like that, that we can do. And with education being half of the budget, it's very important that we have a finance formula that works, because it's an expensive ordeal, the funding of schools, and when the money doesn't get where we want it to from the state level, then a lot of problems occur. I don't know what else I think.
No, those are the three I talked to. But I believe Mark has some follow-up.
Yeah, and it sort of plays into a couple of ideas that I had before we got started here. You mentioned that we need to be governing and legislating, thinking about the next generations, and it strikes me that next generation in Kansas is somewhat problematic. We're 2.7 million people, not very much bigger than we were in 1990. We have a rapidly growing, disproportionately elderly population in the state. Our own university president talks about a bit of a boomlet in terms of school-age children, but how do we get a handle on where Kansas is going to be in the next 50 years? What role does a governor play in shaping that? Because it seems like Kansas is like a lot of Midwestern states. It's on a curve that's not as steeply upward directed as a lot of other places in the country.
A governor can have a big role to play in that, and should have a big role, and that's why I start by saying, where are we going to be in the future? We should every day when we get up in the morning, what will our children have for Kansas? We have to encourage economic development in this state. It should be the #1 thing that we do, is encourage economic development. It solves all the other problems associated with the budget. Many people believe that in Topeka, the general fund is the governors or the legislators to spend, but that money belongs to the people. And if we want to stop the decline in rural areas of the state, southwest Kansas, the towns aren't shrinking as bad as they are in northwest. Southeast is holding steady. There is a national urbanization of people, so it's not, as you say, just Kansas that this is happening in. But we really need to work every day on economic development, and especially in the rural areas. We can't cause people to move out and become farmers. Farms are getting bigger, and the number of farmers are getting smaller. But we can get the lampshade factory to move out there, or a shoelace factory. I mean, there are kinds of businesses that we can get that have 20 or 30 employees that can locate in a Hayes or a Garden City or a Liberal or a Dodge City, even a St. Francis or a Ulysses or a Baxter Springs. So we should work on that. Then the question becomes, how do we do it? We can't do it if our taxes are higher than our surrounding states. We're the highest tax state of all those that touch us. 17% higher taxes in Kansas over Colorado. We can't get businesses to come and locate here if our taxes are too high. And the current philosophy, and the philosophy in Kansas over the past 20 years, has been tax everybody more, give economic grants to a few people to move in, and what happens is pretty soon we have more government and more spending than we can afford, and we're about at that point today in Kansas. So my plan would be lower tax rates, lower corporate tax rates, personal income tax rates, contrary to what the legislature is talking about today, lower property tax rates, contrary to what you hear from a spending legislature. Lower those rates, cause economic development to occur, and really work hard on getting those businesses to locate all around Kansas, not just in Wichita and Kansas City.
We've had recent legislatures, and I'm by no means long enough in Kansas to have a personal memory of all of this, but I read that we've had legislatures that have been cutting taxes during the Graves administration. But we're sitting today, according to the Consensus Estimating Committee, looking at a $700 million gap between what the state would be spending according to its current spending plans and what the governor would have liked to have had in his first budget, and where we are in terms of revenue. So it sounds like, in part, we've been doing part of what you're asking for. They have been cutting taxes. How do we wake up and get surprised by a $700 million shortfall?
Because they've been spending faster. I was Speaker of the House for the first 4 years that Bill Graves was governor, the years we cut taxes. And it was a remarkable time because, first of all, the economy of the country was doing better. So some could say, well, yeah, Shallenberger, but the economy of the federal government was doing better and the whole economy was doing better. and you had nothing to do with that. The reality was, every time we cut taxes in Topeka, our revenues came in. We would anticipate a drop in revenue because we cut a tax rate, but the revenue came in way more than we thought, and we had big surpluses every year. When we gave more money to the Kansas people, even though they didn't notice it, a penny here, a week, or a little drop in their property tax, they didn't even notice. They spent that money and caused the economy to do better. What people may not realize is the last couple of years in Topeka, they've raised your taxes. You may not have noticed that either, but the gas tax has gone up over a couple of year period, and you've had less money to spend, and it causes the economy to do worse. While we cut taxes, the Kansas economy outpaced the national economy. When we started raising taxes, the state economy started doing worse than the national economy.
And are you suggesting that the increases have wiped out the cuts that were made in those
Well,
first
then you get to the budget. You get to the budget problems. We left a big surplus. When we left being Speaker of the House, we left a big surplus. What happened, the legislature, the last 4 years, has spent more money than it's taken in because they had this surplus pot over here. And so they, in essence, deficit spent. Have $4 billion in revenue, spend $4.2 billion. Well, that's a hole. Have 4.2 in revenue, spend 4.4. What happens? The surplus eliminated. They built a base up above the revenue expectations, and then the revenue expectations dropped $675 million, and they're caught short. The hole isn't really 675. You accurately asked that question, which is, I've talked to a lot of reporters, and you actually know we have less money than we thought we would have. We aren't 675 million in the hole. We just have 675 million more than we thought we'd have, but we thought we'd have 300 million more than we had last year. That sounds convoluted,
gotcha.
But so it's a spending problem. You can't increase spending in this state at rates above the cost of living like we have. 5 years above the cost of living. It's an $800 million less budget this year if we'd have been at the cost of living rather than a bigger increase. $478 million the last 4 years in spending above what you took in. Those kind of things create the hole, not the tax cuts.
How much of an impact does the elderly population, the Medicaid costs, the change in federal block grants affect that spending requirement?
It has a big effect. The Medicaid budget is $1.5 billion now, and gosh, only 5 or 6 years ago it was $600 million. So it's going up disproportionately high. And that's not all based, of course the elderly population is growing, you're accurate there too, but not to that amount. And so the cost, you have a larger population and a doubling of the cost, it's just compounding stuff. We have to get our arms around the increased cost for benefits, medical benefits, not just to the elderly, but to the working poor who we give medical benefits to, children we give benefits to. We should put more into prevention than we probably, a disproportionately more higher part into prevention than we do into the after thoughts of Medicare. We can do better probably at causing people to take generic drugs over the name brands. There are things we can do at nursing home care to, if we keep people at home, it really saves us money. It doesn't cost us more. So there are things we can do, but we've just not had any leadership in the last few years to change things.
And I think a lot of viewers, when they hear you talk about the environment and education, will nod their heads, but then also wonder, wow, if we're in a budget crisis now, how do we pay for if we do need to increase tourism and economic development, try to increase teacher salaries? How could we do that if we're in deficit now in the future?
Well, we do it by taking the general operating expenses of the state and reducing them. I can give you anecdotal evidence. I mean, right here in Topeka, you know, we built buildings, we buy cars, we talk about tunnels. Those are not things that in bad times you should be talking about. Those are the kind of things you wait when you have the money. You know, we spent $7 million on office cubicles. Just the cubicles you put people in. Those are the kind of things you do when you have it, not when you don't. So there are those kinds of spending things we need not do. But there again, the way we budget is flawed in this state. We give an agency money. I'm one of them now. I'm the treasurer. We submit a budget. If we don't spend our budget, the legislature takes it back. What incentive does that give us to not spend it? We do that with schools. We give the school X $1 million, and we say, what you don't spend, we're going to take away from you. Well, at the end of the year, they spend it. At the end of the year, the government spends it. And we need not budget that way. We need to say, if you want to keep some money, if you find ways to save money, if you have plans that will save the taxpayers money, we'll give you a bonus, or we'll let your people have extra money, or we'll put that into a pool for state employees' pay, or something like that. and not we're going to take it back and give you an incentive to spend it. Those are the kinds of things that we can do to reduce. If we just cut 2 or 3% out of the general operating expenses, we could still get pay raises. We could do cost of living. We can still fund the pension. In our agency, the general fund portion of my budget in the last 3 years has literally gone down. It's not been a smaller increase, but the general fund portion, the part the taxpayers pay for, has gone down. And that's because we didn't ask for money we didn't need. We didn't spend money at the end of the year because we had it. We gave it back, and we asked for less the next year. We've done that 3 years in a row. We can do that in Health and Environment, Department of Corrections, Wildlife and Parks, SRS. But the governor needs to have a cabinet in position that insists that that happens.
It sounds to me from the things you're saying that you'd be an activist governor in the sense that you want to get into office and put in this new type of budgeting and focus on some issues in that sense. Could you characterize yourself?
Yeah, I have always been, you don't want to sound bad when people are watching, I've always wanted to been more involved in the governance than the issues. I think there's long-range good to be had in the way we do things, not just the issues that are involved. So when I was Speaker of the House, I didn't have an issue I promoted. I didn't, and so I'm going to get this bill passed or this bill passed. I generally believe that we should reduce the growth in government spending, that we should try to lower tax rates. We try to do, I'm doing exactly now on the campaign trail what I said, what I did when I was Speaker of the House, reduce tax rates. It's beneficial to us. And try to find more efficient ways to run the government. That's what I want to be, is 4 years of efficiency. That will reduce our tax rates. That in turn will cause more economic development. That in turn will put more money in people's pockets, and the economy will do better, and we won't worry about the general fund. It's a simple economics 101 formula, which everybody, I believe, should agree with, but we can't seem to get anybody in Topeka, and I talk about that meeting at the Capitol, to want to do that.
Let me shift the topic just a little bit. You've been characterized by the media as the conservative Republican candidate for governor. You mentioned that it's time for a conservative governor, but I sense from what you've been saying that you're thinking about conservative in, as you just said, the governance standpoint. What's the relevance of this conservative label for you in terms of the way the press is characterizing it and the politics of the Republican Party? What does that mean beyond being efficient and tidy with the process of governance?
I believe the Republican Party is the conservative party, and there are there are a variety of labels, probably 5 or 6 you can drop, from liberal Democrat to conservative Republican, or there may be even one right-wing conservative Republican, maybe something even further right than that, I don't know. But I think the Republican Party is considered as the conservative party. The Democrat Party is considered the liberal party. I don't mean conservative to mean some ultra-right side of the party. I just think Republicans believe government should be watched, that free enterprise works if you let it, that you need to protect workers and you need to protect the environment, and there are things you need to do, but by and large, free enterprise will work if you let it. That economic development occurs when we are competitive, not if we have competitive programs, but if we are competitive. If our taxes are lower than our surrounding states, people look to where to locate their business, they come here. Those are the kinds of things that make me be conservative. I think the reason that they're calling me the conservative candidate is my opponents are liberals. I mean, there's a difference in the Republican primary between us. I'm for less taxes, less government. The others are supporting tax increases and more government. They may want to call themselves conservative, but if you want a tax increase and you want to grow government rates like we've been growing them, I don't consider that conservative. So I don't run from the label. I've been told I should. I've been told, oh, you don't want to be called conservative. It doesn't bother me. I'm proud to be conservative.
How about the moralist, ideological aspects of conservative? It seems to be what the press is driving at, the notion that the Christian right, the anti-abortion faction of the Republican Party, that's the conservative wing of the Republican Party, and that's who you're attached to.
Well, I'm conservative there too. So that, we don't know why all the labels get thrown around, but we believe we're conservative. I suppose, as I think of the 2 or 3 issues, and they're not all moral issues, I'm probably the more conservative of those two. Of the candidates running in the Republican primary, I'm the pro-life candidate. Of the candidates running the Republican primary, I'm the Second Amendment, the freedom to have a gun candidate, whatever name you want to call that. I am the less tax candidate. Trying to get other moral issues that play into it. So on all those areas where there are, you know, there are a lot of coalitions out there. You get the gun owners and the anti-gun people, the pro-life, the pro-choice. And so we tend to get the ones considered conservative to support us, and the other opponents have to get the other side, I guess.
Let me give you a free plug. Your website is timshallenberger.com.
Yes, it is.
Free plug. I was consulting it, and there was a statement on the website, quote, "Leadership is needed in government in order to reverse an ever-growing moral decline in our country." It just brings up the question, do you think it's the duty of a governor to offer moral guidance to citizens? And if so, what kind of moral guidance?
I think it's the duty of a governor to set a moral and ethical position. The governor shouldn't be a preacher. The governor is not the spiritual leader of the state. He's the political leader of the state. But I believe that you look at people based on their character, that you deal with their ethics. You know, we tell people, I've been in politics for 15 years, and the slings and arrows come at you. So, I mean, you always get picked on for one thing or another, but I've never gone to bed at night in the 15 years I've been in politics and think I've done anything immoral, illegal, unethical. I think that that's important. I think that our president today sets a much different example than the president that we had, and I think most Americans, no matter where they are, ethically or morally believe that to be the case, and I think the governor should stand for that. I believe the governor that we have now is considered an ethical and moral person, so I'm not being critical of them. I just think that it's important that those that we elect, whether they're the mayor or the city councilman, that you don't read that they were behind a brothel last night, or things like that, and that's the kind of standards I would hope that we would have in Kansas.
Kansas had a governor, Henry Allen, who thought it was morally wrong for the KKK to be operating in Kansas, and went about basically to get them out. Is there any one issue that you would use the bully pulpit for, or is it more just, as you said, just a tone?
I don't believe that I have any particular. I mean, there are things we can do on abortion. We have rugged debates over abortion about once a year in Topeka. There are probably compromises that can be made there that stand the Roe v. Wade tests, that are not radical one way or the other. So there are probably ways we could put some of these issues to bed if we just had leadership to bring the sides together. The legislature just passed a bill dealing with liability on guns. It's one of those things where it's a rational approach. It's not a problem. So there are ways, if you have a governor who can compromise things, to put some of these moral issues to bed. And I have a very good reputation. I believe you can ask Democrats, you can ask my Republican colleagues on both sides of the political spectrum. When Tim Shallenberger was Speaker, we were fair, we were open, we were honest. We let everybody have their debate, and we were really able to compromise on a lot of things for the betterment of Kansas.
On that sort of issue, where do you stand on the issue of legalizing slots and expanding gambling in the state of Kansas?
I am not and have not ever been a promoter of expanded gambling. And that's not from a moral point of view. If you want to go gamble, it's your money. But how convenient should we make it, and what kind of economic impact does it have? We have seen studies that say if you go to a slot machine, you plug in your money, and you put your winnings back, and you're sitting there just playing it. For the state to get $15 million, which they say we're going to get $400 million, which is bogus, but if we get $15 million, you've got to put $1 billion in the slot machine. I think that's money you don't go to the movies, you don't buy your children lunch with, it's money you don't buy cars, and I think it's an economic, there's economic consequences of it, so it's not the should you be allowed to gamble or who should profit from it, because right now there is gambling that the state doesn't profit from. I just think convenience gambling is not a good thing for the state.
Another issue question. Do you favor the initiative petition in Kansas?
I co-sponsored that. When Joan Finney was governor, we dealt with initiative and referendum, and I think you'd have to build the right bill. I don't think you should hold the state out to those who want to come in and buy elections, and that's what happens in some states. You hire petition carriers.
Right.
So we had a bill when I was in the legislature that I supported that required a number of petitions in each congressional district. It had to be a broad-based issue, a limitation of the number of issues on the ballot. But if people want to rise up and promote legislation that they think their legislature has not done, I don't have I don't have a problem with it.
Or you could just ban George Soros from coming to Kansas.
He must be one of those petitions.
Yes, he pays for a number of those. I do have one question from Kira Beatty, age 2.5, from Topeka. When you're governor, will you still have the Easter egg hunt on your lawn every April?
Yes. I live about 150 yards from Cedar Crest right now. There's a little addition. I shouldn't tell people that I'll have eggs in my yard maybe for my opponents. And we watch the Easter egg hunt every year. My daughter's 21, so she doesn't roll them around anymore. But it's a great thing and a great crowd together. And I think we should do fireworks there, and I've thought about that, and I've also contemplated a big 4th of July party. So.
Okay, well, you have her vote then.
Okay,
she's
she
allowed
can't vote.
She's allowed to vote in Chicago.
Is she?
But
we can get her right
in Kansas. We have about 1 minute. Is there just anything you'd like to add that we might have touched upon, or sort of you'd like to say to the viewers?
Well, we try not to add things other than it's important that people be involved in elections. You know, this country was founded on the premise that the government belongs to the people. And all the power is vested in the government, not the government. And so I would encourage people, whether they're Republicans or Democrats or conservatives or moderates, to get involved in elections. Those of us who go out and campaign need help, yard signs and bumper stickers and money and all those things. And I would just encourage the people that listen to this, pick a candidate somewhere along the border, get involved, because I think it will help you as a person to know how the process works. It helps the candidate that you help, and I think ultimately it makes America better.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And can we extend the invitation if you make it past April 6th to...
August 6th.
August 6th, excuse me. Come back and see us again.
We'll come back. We pass November. We fireside chat at Cedar Crest.
Super.
We'd like to thank Tim Shallenberger for appearing on Insight Politics, and also remind all of you to vote on August 6th in the Kansas gubernatorial primary. Now it's time for us to go.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Also have classes for accounting. In accounting, students will apply the principles and theories of accounting through learning the procedures used in sole proprietorships, partnerships, and corporations. We also have business publication, designed to produce materials for teachers, administrators, booster clubs, and the community. Next, there's the internship program, where many students have jobs out of school. In this case, they can leave school to go to their jobs for an internship. There's some other classes offered in the business program, such as Advanced Word Processing. This course will take students through an in-depth exploration of Microsoft Word and its many features. You could also take Economics, where you will study microeconomics and macroeconomics. You see, there's so much more than just these, though. There's a lot of other classes, too. So sign up for them. If you don't take classes at the business program, you'll probably end up like this guy, sitting around playing Nintendo for the rest of your life. But if you do take the classes, you'll end up like this guy, rich with a big job at a big corporation.
Our business program at Washington Rural High School has been developed and changed rapidly throughout the years based on what we feel our students need in a very rapidly changing environment, whether that's students who we are trying to prepare to possibly go on to a four-year college, maybe a junior college, a possible VOTEC track, or maybe students who really want a job directly out of high school. It's kind of our mission that we do the best job that we can through the classes that we offer, preparing students to to go out into the real world and not just survive, but be actual successful in whatever career they choose to hopefully go into.
Well, that concludes the video on the business program. You now know that those classes are a necessity of life. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.
Well, that was it. My project over the business program. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to continue to do this into next year. And until then, I'll see you later.
Hi, I'm Jason Weber. I've been on the video production staff for 3 semesters now, and I chose what I think to be one of my better stories. And I chose the Auburn Washburn Public Schools Foundation story because I actually got to leave campus to visit different schools in the 437 district to help donate grants to. It was a great step in my journalism career, so I hope you enjoy it.
It's the Auburn Washburn Foundation, which is set up by the district to encourage teachers to do, as you say, many grants, which normally isn't in the budget. What we plan to do with that is young people like Kelsey Kuhn, a talented person who also volunteered to do some reading of books, which will be given to elementary school teachers, and in turn those teachers will put them in the hands of children who either need additional practice at school or maybe their parents don't have time to read them to them at home. So she is a good role model for those kids, and she's modeling good reading, and so that's why we call it Mrs. R, which stands for Model, Roles, and Service, and then with a big R, Read. You get better at reading by practicing reading.
Okay, thanks. Hello, I'm Jason Weber. I'm here with the Auburn Washburn Public Schools Foundation President, Pam Branstad. How you doing today, Pam?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Can you start off today by telling us a little bit about the foundation and how it got started and some history to it?
Sure. Public school foundations are very common through every public school